Hi, welcome to Adobe Live. I'd like to first start by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land in which we create and stream from today and pay respects to elders past, present, and emerging. My name is Denise Chippendale, or you can call me Chip, and I am so excited to be here today hosting Adobe Live with the lovely Jeremy Lord. Jeremy, welcome.
Hey, good to be back. How are you
Yeah,
guys?
good. Yeah, great. It's so good to have you back from gallivanting around Europe. How was it?
Yeah, it was great. Really good.
Uh, Oh,
Really
that's
good.
so
Just
good.
just yeah, glad to be back. Got a little bit sick on the way back in, but yeah.
Yeah, all that travel, but it's nice to be back in sunny Sydney.
Yeah, it's nice to get a bit of cold actually, ironically. I'm kind of
It's
glad for the
crisp,
winter and freezing here.
totally. Yeah. And you've
Yeah,
had a bit of sun, so it's nice to sort of get back into trackies.
indeed. Yep.
Yay. So, what are we going to be working on today, Jeremy?
So I think I thought I'd kind of try something a little bit different. We've done a bunch of streams together, and going through kind of the techniques that I use in a more kind of regular on a more regular basis, professionally and such. But um, I think it can be nice every now and then to kind of try a new style,
Hmm.
whether or not it's something that you use professionally is a different question. Whether it's something that you build into your, I guess, for lack of a better word, offer to your clients, and whether you or not you should do that is different questions that we can kind of go into as we get into this artwork. But I'm pretty pumped about Beetlejuice 2 coming out. It's got the whole team back together. They haven't swapped in. It's still Michael Keaton, still Tim Burton, still Winona Ryder,
Awesome.
and Kate O'Hara as well. So I'm pretty pumped about that. And I thought I've always been a kind of a fan of that Tim Burton aesthetic, like his own illustrations and concepts that he has done kind of in earlier days that kind of seep through into Beetlejuice, Batman, all those kind of like really dark gothic kind of movies.
Yeah.
Um, so I thought I would do something like that, but kind of mix it up a little bit and do, I guess, a bit of a mixed media, like a digital mixed media. So we're going to get into some kind of painterly vibes, which is
Mm.
not something that I usually do. I usually like to work with flat colors. And then tomorrow we'll get into kind of scratchy and inky and really get that kind of Tim Burton style around this idea of Beetlejuice.
Brilliant. I was going to say, I was like,
Yeah.
how did you get a photo of me this morning?
You're looking much
But
better now.
yeah, there we go. Yeah. I had a coffee, woke up. Yeah, and I'm so excited for Beetlejuice too. I just need to catch up and watch Beetlejuice 1. So that's my
Yeah.
disclaimer for the live
Yeah.
today. You're teaching a novice.
It's always good to kind of rewatch these things anyways before going into the second one, just as a reminder. But
Reminder.
yeah,
Yeah,
if you haven't watched the first one, definitely get in there. It's such a like
I know.
quintessential 80s movie.
Yeah, I need to. Well, I'm back. I'm in my new place now, and I'm gonna get a projector. So I think I might need a movie night.
Really
Yeah, be fun.
nice.
Yeah. So take it away. And for all those tuning in live, if you have any questions for Jeremy, just pop it in the chat, and we'll endeavor to answer those throughout the session.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Um, okay, so what I've got up right now is just some basic reference, some inspiration around that. We haven't really done anything with style here. Like I probably should look at some kind of Tim Burton style, but it's something that I've been a fan of for quite a while. So it's something that kind of lives rent free in my brain. Um, which is, I think it's one of those things is like the more you do it, the more you look at reference, the more inspiration you get in that same kind of vein, the less you need to go in and look at it the next time you want to do it. So just looking at kind of Michael Keaton and that kind of Beetlejuice character and what he actually looks like and the poses, and obviously the weird wacky house that's on top of the hill there. Um, Less so the Tim Burton kind of style and look and feel itself. But yeah, so we're starting with this. And then we've got another kind of slide over here where we're going to start working on that. So let's bring that over into our artboard here. And I'm pretty set on doing something. Obviously, like whenever we do these streams, I tend to have something already kind of prepared for this, so not going in like completely blind. But let's grab this and just to kind of showcase what you could do with reference like this. Like I like this pose of like Beetlejuice has just been summoned. He's sitting on the headstone, and he's got that kind of like crazy like psychotic smile, but it's still a little bit kind of humorous. It's not too scary. But the head isn't quite right. Like we want to get a little bit more detail in the head here. He's looking a little bit too far up. So we've got this one, and literally, I'm not going to be fussy. I'm just going to use this as kind of reference in that sense. So it doesn't need to be completely accurate. And I'm literally just going to flip this and rescale it a little bit and just pop a new head on that head. And as long as it doesn't look like completely horrible and like out of proportion, will be pretty good to use this as a reference, as a kind of a pose reference in that sense. So let's kind of grab those two. I can delete that layer now. So that's what I would kind of do in these instances whenever I'm doing any kind of piece in any kind of style. It's a good idea to kind of just, you can mishmash different references together and see how that kind of looks. If you want to put, something in his hand, or like a cocktail or a cockroach or something, I don't know. You can do
Cocktail, I
that as
prefer
well.
that.
Yeah. Cockroach is probably more on theme though, but
True. This is true.
Yeah. So we've got this kind of idea. And so from that kind of reference, I had prepared a bunch of different kind of styles of sketches. I'd actually started with this sketch of Beetlejuice here, and thought that's still kind of too like what I would do. And I'm trying to get that kind of Tim Burton-y vibe. And so I ended up doing kind of this one and like changing it up a little bit, scratching it up a little bit more, I guess, which is that kind of Tim Burton, real kind of ink etching, kind of sketching vibe. So we're going to work with something like this. We're going to grab this guy, and I'm just going to do a rough selection around it, duplicate it with my trusty kind of duplication tool. We can get rid of all these things around here. And we're going to rescale this. Oops, sorry. Hey, don't do that. We're going to rescale this. What's going on? What's going on? Please don't do this to me now. Yeah, here we go. Rescale. Bring it up to roughly about here and drop the opacity. Now, what I also like to do when I'm kind of doing this kind of thing, and the idea is this is probably going to be like a poster. I also like to do a little bit of a frame within the frame. And that just means that you're not going to be kind of doing a sketch and be afraid to like break it in to the actual area. Here you've got some room to move around, and it's a good little kind of thing to do, I always find, and just kind of like adding in details that maybe you wouldn't do it if you was right so close to the edge of the canvas, like over here. It can kind of restrict you in. So doing this kind of frame within a frame just means you have just that little bit more freedom to mess around with different ideas. And I think kind of helps quite a bit. I've also not left a huge amount of room for any text in here. Like if this is meant to be a poster, I'll need to think about like, where is text going to go in here? And I mean, it could go a number of different places to try it out. But yeah, again, having that frame means that I've got a little bit of like room to mess around out here. That's not going to kind of hamper me too much there. And then I'm pretty much ready to go on this and start laying down some kind of basic foundation colors. So for that painterly style, there's two ways you can kind of do something like this. Let's label this layer here real quick. Sketch. And we can get rid of these guys. And we can get rid of this and that. And here we go.
And while you're setting up those layers, there's been a question just to kick things off. Your favorite Tim Burton movie?
I think I would have to say the first Batman.
Iconic. Yeah.
Iconic, really kind of Burton-y as well. I would also say Nightmare Before Christmas, but not directed by Tim Burton, but produced
Right.
and like all the creative stuff, all the designs of the characters and the story is written by Tim Burton. It's just been directed by Henry Selick. So yeah, so those two I think are just like prime Burton,
Brilliant.
in that sense of like, yeah. So yeah,
I've watched one out of the two, so we're getting there.
which one?
Batman.
Yeah, of course. Okay, so let's get into, first off, we're going to get into like very, very basic. Let me hide this real quick. Sorry, I don't know why it keeps coming up. Some basic color laying down, right? That's always going to be the first port of call when you're doing something like this. And we're doing it underneath our layer here. So some people like to just start painting straight off the bat with like two colors and start just kind of getting into it without a sketch, and get that kind of painterly feel, right? So it can be quite good to do that, and get that very kind of painty vibe. But it also means it can be quite daunting to get into it, because you don't really have a base layer to wrap your head around and you're kind of going in blind. So I'm not going to do that. We're going to work from this kind of a very simple kind of basic layer here. And I'm going to start with just a random color. And I'm just going to make a bit of a marquee tool selection like this and fill that with a color. Just there, I've got like something on the page and I can start messing around with different things. Now, when I'm doing this, I'm going to be using brushes that have, I guess, a good amount of mixing involved in them. And I'm using this brush that I downloaded. This is one of Carl T. Webster's brushes. I'm using that simply because it's got a good kind of idea of kind of mixing colors together, and it's got a little bit of texture to it as well, right? These kind of brushes can potentially slow your computer down because they're doing a little bit more when they're working than your standard round brush. There's a little bit more happening here at every stroke.
Yeah.
So they can be a little bit like, they can make your computer chug a little bit more. But what we want is that kind of nice painty vibe where these colors are going to blend together, and we're going to get a bit of an organic kind of, yeah, we're going to see some brush strokes, which is absolutely what we want on something like this, to be able to kind of see the brush strokes and work from that. So I've just done a couple of different edits with this, just trying to like make it do what I want without, breaking the bank in terms of how it kind of functions, and trying to like get it to not slow my computer down too much. So we don't really want to get in too much into sort of brush building at this stage, simply because it's a whole nother kettle of fish.
Another session.
Yeah, it is. But important to have the right brush for what you're trying to do here. There's a range of different brushes that you can use in this sense, but yeah, important to have the right brush. And I think in this sense as well, one of the things that I tend to do quite a bit when I'm working like in my traditional way is build a lot of layers in so that I've got heaps of control. But when I'm doing something like this, I want the colors to mix. I want the colors to interact, and I want that painterly look. And if you were working in paints, you're obviously not going to have any layers there. And so we're going to try and kind of emulate that. I'm going to try and do everything on the same layer.
Whoa, that's impressive.
Interesting. Wow. Yeah.
No judgment, but we're all watching.
Which, like, again, means you need to be like savvy with your colors as you get into this, right? Because it's going to change a bunch of different things. And you won't be able to edit colors separately to one another. So I'm going to change this blue that I had to like a vivid green, because I want a bit of that kind of like Beetlejuice kind of like horror movie toxic green color, if that makes sense.
I know exactly what you're talking about. Yeah.
Yeah. And then I'm going to come in with a a black, but it's not going to be a black. It's going to be like a very, very, very dark blue. So for all intents and purposes, it's going to be something that we're going to be working with quite easily, but I do want that kind of a darker color in there. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go in with a much bigger brush, and I'm going to do a rough gradient. So here you can see, it's starting to kind of make my computer kind of chug a little bit when I'm doing this, and I'm not happy about that. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to I'm going to reduce my image size down. So this is a little trick when you can do this if you want to kind of work like this. I've got an A4, but if I reduce the image size down by like half, so let's say this is going to be 105. And then after we've done this step, we can reboost it up again a little bit. And because we've got something that's not too, that's going to be a little bit kind of textury and blurry, the worry of losing that resolution is not as big a deal when we're doing this, because it's already kind of a little bit blurry in that sense. So I can do this and then rescale it up a little bit and not have to worry too much about what's going on.
That's great.
So it's just, again, it's just a little kind of tip if you're into this kind of thing, but you want to get something a little bit different, and you don't want your computer to like melt as you're doing it. Then it can definitely be something that you can do with this in terms of like getting that looking the way you kind of want it, but also working properly.
What canvas size do you normally work in normally?
It depends, because I'm working with Photoshop and not vectors, right? I'm not working in Illustrator with vectors. I need to be conscious of a particular size that I'm likely to want this thing to be when it grows up, when it's finished. So really kind of depends on what the client has specified and what the client needs and wants. Usually if it's personal work that will potentially be printed, I will work at least A3. But because I'm not usually working with brushes like this, I'm usually working with flat colors. I don't necessarily have this issue very often of like trying to like get, these very, very big surface areas done with brushes that are very kind of process heavy in that sense.
So you'll resize that back now?
I've just resized that back up. And obviously that has meant that there's maybe been some resolution loss, but because of the nature of this brush, it's barely visible. There's no clean edges here, so to speak. So it doesn't really matter that much. And in fact, what I could do here is save myself some time and go into my gradient tool. And I'm going to just drop that in to a transparent gradient. And we're going to go in, we're going to go in with a selection in here, just a rough one. And just make a bit of a gradient there. And I can come back in with a brush later on to kind of smoothen that down a little bit. There we go. So that's probably going to be a bit better. Then come back to my brush. And we can start to think about like where the lighting's going to come from, how it's all going to work, and so on and so forth. So again, like this usually would take a fair bit of time to get these gradients right. And the blending that you want to do when you're doing this is a little bit of like, you can mess around with what you're kind of trying to do here. And generally the technique is when you're trying to blend like this color and that color, when you've got this like blue and this green, right? Unless you've got this like color dynamics that I've got on here, what you generally tend to do is you try and hold down the Option key on your brush, which gives you the eyedropper. And then you do a color in between, and then you eyedrop one of the darker colors, and then you can blend it back, and then you can eyedrop that one and blend it back in, and so on and so forth, right? So you can kind of layer up your work with these kind of in-between tones that will give you a bit more of a smoother kind of gradient in here. So here you can see I've done it very, very roughly, but basically what you would do is you would just kind of keep grabbing colors on either side of it until you've got a smooth gradient. Just be aware that you don't want it to be too muddy as well. Like if your goal is brush and kind of painterly look, you want to keep some of these brush strokes, you want to keep in there so you can kind of see the work, if you know what I mean. If it's too smooth, if it's been like too overly blended and just really just this perfect kind of gradient, then you're not really going to get that look, and you're going to get a very muddy, blurry image, and you're probably not going to be super happy with it. So I think it's a good kind of thing to think about of like, don't overwork it. Try and kind of stay in the realm of like, just work a little bit quickly, a little bit loosely. Work small if you want to as well. You can try and do that and try and sort of work from a distance so you're not getting too bogged down on details, and trying to sort of, finalize and kind of finish and figure out the artwork. That's never really kind of like the best way to do this. But yeah, spending a lot of time on this gradient right now.
Great. Do you find working on one layer like quite daunting?
Yeah, 100%.
Especially on a live.
Especially on a live. But
I don't know how you're doing it.
Like,
I'd be like, oh.
it can be quite fun as well to try and do that, because you've got it's something a little bit different, something to kind of consider when you're trying to work with these. And also you don't have to do as much layer management, right? You don't have to worry about naming your layers as much, and any of that kind of nonsense. So there's advantages to it, for sure. I've swapped to a different brush now, something a little bit more kind of pastel-y, to kind of finalize this. Now, I am actually going to make a new layer for Beetlejuice, because I don't necessarily want him kind of blending into the background too much. So we can work on something with that a little bit more cleanly, and work to a little bit of a thing. So I'm going to leave that layer up, and I might actually invert my line work here in the base so that I can kind of see it. And I'm going to call this guy Beetlejuice. And I got my base and I've got Beetlejuice in there, and that's all looking pretty good. So again, same thing here. I'm going to come in with a bit of a kind of overtone of green. So I'm not going to work with too many colors. I just want a bit of a yellowier green, if that's a word.
Yeah, great technique.
And just fill that in there. And in fact, now I need to probably swap that back, so that I can actually see, because I've got a bit of a lighter tone in there. And all I'm doing here is just kind of coming in and filling that, blocking that kind of drawing with some of that kind of base color. And maybe I will get rid of that layer in the background just so I can kind of do that at this earlier stage. Again, like, this is not something that I normally do. So forgive me if it's not as kind of smooth and like I know exactly what I'm doing when I'm doing it, as these streams might normally be. But again, this is part of the fun of kind of doing this, and you learn new stuff, right? And some of the stuff that I'm doing here might kind of bleed into the work that I do on a professional sense. And what I was kind of talking about before, in terms of like whether or not you should or could build these kinds of things into your regular workflow, kind of stems from this idea that, I always kind of think that master of one trade is always going to be better than jack of all trades.
Yeah.
From a client's perspective, it's just a whole lot better to work in that sense. And like clients will know what they want what they're going to get from you, and kind of know what to ask from you and so on. And so it's just going to be a much better outcome for you, I think. So yeah, this is not something that I would necessarily say, like, think about how you can incorporate this kind of thing into your own body of work. But definitely there is going to be, some knowledge taken from this that could potentially be something that I could use with a different project for sure.
For sure.
All right, so I'm pretty happy with this base layer. Now I can start putting in some detail. All right, so I'm going to start putting in some detail into the face and working with something like that. So let's go in. It's got that nice kind of like unhealthy yellow vibe to him.
Yeah.
I'm trying to get something where the light's coming from below. So I'm going to try and get a little bit of kind of lighting in basic areas that are going to give me this kind of like lit from below vibe. And I need a bit of a lighter tone. So again, here I'm not like too fussed about the detail. You can see that it's all over the place. That's okay at this stage. We can come back in and like carve this back out a little bit as we get kind of deeper into this piece. But effectively, what I'm doing is just kind of trying to create a sense of light in this particular piece without getting too bogged down in detail at this stage. So I'm going to go and grab a bit of a bluish green for the shadows. I've said this before on streams as well, where if you're trying to do a bit of a darker tone of something, try and avoid going into just adding in black straight away into that piece, simply because it never really works out the way you think it's going to work out, I think. Adding in a bit of blue is always going to work. Obviously, there's a bit of an overtone of blue to what I'm doing anyways now. So that blue is going to kind of work a little bit better for me as a kind of a standard.
And which brush are you using? Are you bouncing between?
I've swapped to like a pastel-y kind of brush. If I drop these settings out, you can see I've got this like dry media brush now. This is just so that I can kind of start thinking about like how this all kind of interacts a little bit. And again, I'm not too worried about the detail at this stage. Yeah, I'm just trying to get, like, I've turned this on a little bit too soon for this blending, so I'm going to turn it back off again. I'm just trying to get a good sense of where are my highlights and shadows going to live. And then I can start thinking about how this all kind of comes together in a little bit more detail, right? Because if I get too bogged down in detail at this stage, it's probably not going to work out the way that I'm kind of hoping it'll work out. So again, just trying to get a little bit of a better sense of kind of what this is going to do and how it's going to look. I'm going to desaturate the suit here because his suit is white. So I don't want it to be the same color as his face, because that's not going to work out necessarily the same way, the way that I'm really thinking. But I do want a little bit of a tone here, so it's not actually working. So again, this is where like my usual way of working would be handy here, where I've got it on a separate layer and I can control its color individually.
Not going to say anything, not going to comment.
But,
You're doing well.
So let's go in and just kind of get that in there. As soon as the stripes come in, I think it'll start to come together a little bit better. And
do you give yourself these type of briefs every now and then where you're trying to work in a different style just to keep, yeah,
for sure. I mean, it's a little bit of fun as well. It's not something that I would recommend you do all the time, because I think like working in a style that you're like familiar with. The point of it is also that, like you want to do the things that you're good at. Feeling like you're not good at something is not very conducive to you doing it very
Yeah.
often. Like if you don't feel like you're successful or good at doing something, it doesn't feel nice to do that.
Mm,
So yeah, so you got to be a little bit kind of careful not to just be learning all the time. It's nice to every now and then be like, all right, cool, I'm going to do the thing that I know how to do, and that's going to make me feel like I know what I'm doing, and it's going to be like comfortable. So it's not
definitely.
always about being out of your comfort zone, but
Yeah,
definitely nice to every now and then just like try a different flavor, maybe.
definitely.
What are you doing? I'm pressing all types of buttons, and my brain is not back. There we go. Sorry about that. Let's get the eyes in. In fact, the eyes can probably be a nice kind of white. And let's get that suit pattern in. So we want to grab this blue and we want to make it a little bit darker. Again, we don't want the black completely there, but we do want a little bit of that kind of hint of what's going on here. I might regret this later on. Maybe this is something that I could do tomorrow when we're talking
Right.
about scratching and inking this up. But it's also kind of nice.
Why is that you would regret it?
Well, because I'm working on the same layer, right? So
Yeah.
if I decide tomorrow that actually I should have done this with my inks, I should have saved this particular detail with my inks. Now I'm stuck. Now I've got this on that same layer. So it's like, well, yeah,
You're into deep
this,
now.
erasing this is going to
Yeah.
be very, very tricky
Yes.
to do. So yeah, potentially something to think about when you're doing this. But yeah, in fact, what I could do, because I don't really want these to blend too much, is I could actually just do these on a separate layer, and then I've saved myself.
Sorry, I've made you second guess.
No, it's good actually, because now I'm working potentially a little bit better with this kind of detail.
Not as dangerous.
No. And again, I've got to like stop myself. Like I'm normally, if I was doing this like in my kind of usual way, I would start thinking about details in the face and getting the teeth and all that kind of nitty-gritty nastiness that can go into this kind of illustration. It's kind of like horror style illustration where there's a lot of like detail to be added into here. Like if we switch back to my reference and inspiration, oops, you'll see like, yeah, there's a lot of like dirt and grime and things that we could do with this that we could start getting into detail in here. But that is where my inking is potentially going to come in a little bit more handy to get that level of detail. I'm not looking for super level of detail at this stage. It's possible to do that with this kind of like more painterly style. Obviously it is, but it is definitely a little bit harder as well to kind of achieve that. And it definitely takes a little bit more time and practice, which, full disclosure, because this is not something that I normally do, like I'm not the most well-versed and practiced person in kind of getting this painterly style in a digital way. But yeah.
Looking pretty good to me. We have a question, an inquisitive question. Have you found a use for AI tools in your workflow in Adobe?
Yeah.
This one's a topical.
It is a topical one. AI is, shall we say, a controversial topic, to put it mildly.
Is that what you look like when you're talking about AI? Bit scary, bit Tim Burton.
That's what I feel inside.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, no, I think it's for me, AI is great for coming up with like concepts that maybe I wouldn't have come up with completely on my own.
Yeah.
So AI can be quite good at doing like giving you ideas that are a little bit weird and wackier than maybe you might normally have. Um, I wouldn't obviously, I think where people kind of get caught up with AI is when it starts to become something where people use it to literally just like create finished work,
Yeah.
which is like, no, that I think is where I would definitely like draw the line. But if we're talking about like, yeah, like use this to, generate an idea or something that you might not have thought of very quickly, or if you're just trying to get something like, hey, what would it look like if instead of standing on a tombstone, he was standing on a beach ball or something, you could do that with AI pretty quickly, and get at least a good idea of how that's going to be when you do it in the final, without having to commit too much to actually doing it that way. So yeah, AI definitely, I think, has a little bit of a place in that workflow.
Yes.
But I think, yeah, the main difference I would say is that it's a workflow thing. It's not a work thing. It's like,
Yeah.
it's the flow that you use to get the work that you want to do, but it's not the work that you want to do, if that makes sense.
Correct.
I'm not
Yeah.
sure.
I think it would be great when you're starting at that beginning where you're piecing it all together and then taking that and then making it your own. I think super important. And we've popped in the chat one of Jeremy's older live streams, so definitely check that out as well.
Which one's that?
It was a Firefly one.
Oh yeah. We did some like concepting with that, and it was super fun. Like I had a great time doing that, and trying to like figure out, like what can you do, and there was definitely some really unexpected things that came out of that.
Sometimes you're like, oh, okay, bit left of field.
Yeah, and like, oh, I hadn't thought about that because the AI is still at a stage where it's like it's powerful, but it's going to do some weird stuff.
Yeah.
But that weird stuff might be kind of fun, kind of cool. Like you're not sure, right? So yeah, it's definitely, I think it's not like, I don't see it as this like crazy big bad evil that potentially some people might and be like, oh, it's the end of any artwork ever. It's pure evil. I guess it's just, I guess it's how you use it as well.
Correct.
And I guess it's, yeah, what you do with it, how you're using it. But I do definitely think in my brain, there is absolutely a hard and very clear line of like, if you have just generated some prompts and then that's it, then you said, here's the artwork that I made, and that's what you're posting. And it's like,
Ethically,
yeah.
Doesn't sit quite right.
Things like Kara has come out and kind of tried to do, where Kara is this thing now, if you're not familiar with it. It's basically an Instagram for artists only, kind of artists, photographers, like visual artists. So there's no pictures of people's holidays and that kind of stuff in there. It's just like for like visual artists. But it's no AI. So there is no like, Instagram has now been kind of, not, I guess flooded may be a strong word, but there's definitely a big influx of people who just like generate AI work and then post it on there. And like I follow some of those accounts, and every now and then I get ideas from the work that those people have like generated, if not to say created, in using AI. But yeah, the idea of this thing in Kara is like, the work that you see on this platform is entirely created by that artist. And I think that's a healthy line to draw in the sand for sure, of like, yeah, okay, we're doing the artwork here. It's not a prompt in that sense.
And that's a good, making that distinction. Are you on Kara?
I am, yeah.
Okay.
I got on there mostly to try and like save my name, in case it does one day blow up, which
Take
you never
over.
know.
Yeah, that's right. And we just have another question on AI, and just
Yeah.
in your opinion, do you think AI will make photo editors lose their jobs? Like a lot of editors hate videos that show AI features and the like. What's your take, if you
Will
have any?
AI take jobs away from photo editors?
I guess editors
Um,
and creators, I think we could bundle that together.
I mm, I don't think so.
Yeah.
Um, it will definitely change their job in the same way that AI has changed my job, I
Yes.
guess. Um, but I don't think it'll take away. I always kind of use this example when we're talking about stuff like AI, which is this idea that like the NASA was asked um, ages ago to justify why they're still sending pilots into space. Right? Like, why are you still sending humans into space? Like, if that shuttle explodes, then obviously these humans they lose their lives. Why can't you just send a robot? You don't need to feed the robot. You don't need to like worry too much about what's going on with that robot. So why are you still using humans basically on these missions? And
Mm.
their answer, which I thought was like quite good and quite a simple way to put it, was I can program a machine to go down the hallway and fetch me like a can of Coke or something, right?
Yeah.
But if that machine rolls over $100 bill on the way, it's not going to do anything about it because that's not what it's programmed to do. Um, so obviously we're talking about artificial intelligence, right? So artificial intelligence theoretically would be able to go like, hey, this is a thing I want. I think maybe you'd want me to do this, but I think that's the catch, right? It's like,
Yeah.
I think maybe you want me to do it like this, and that's why we get these like weird and wacky like the stereotype is all like it was always like hands, right? Hands are like horrible with AI because they're so difficult to draw. And I've generated some stuff with AI that's been like there's been a third arm or there's been like stuff like that. And it's like what
Yeah.
like that's weird and it's wacky and yeah. So I think I think it's pretty safe. Whether or not that's going to remain the case
Mm.
is another question, I guess, that you could ask of like, yeah, but AI is making like leaps and bounds all the time. Like, how long is that actually going to remain the case? That
Correct.
it's it's a bit tricky to work with.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I think that's
yeah.
a whole nother stream we could keep rambling about.
It is, yeah. It's
Yeah.
and it's an interesting topic because it like it's important to a lot of people. It's not something to necessarily be like just dismissed willy nilly, for sure. Um, but yeah, I think that there is still this like thing of there's no I don't know. I don't want to say I don't know what the exact word is here, but it's still not really kind of getting a brief, right? Like while I was away, I saw a bunch of work that was clearly like a client had just gotten somebody to just generate it in AI. And you could see it because it was terrible
ChatGPT.
resolution.
Yeah.
Yeah, like it was literally an artwork of like a golden
Oh,
angel with
artwork.
like golden wings. And it was like, it, there was stuff in there that didn't make sense. And there was just like, you could 100% see that this was not like done by an artist who had a brief, who like gave and took feedback from the client and so on and so forth. Like there was definitely just somebody just made it with a prompt and then printed it, literally, just as simple as that.
Yeah.
And you could tell, and I think like maybe it's good enough. Maybe it's good enough for that client to just do what they wanted to do with it, and that's fine too. Like the world needs, McDonald's as well. It can't all be like 5-star Michelin hat cooking.
Mm.
But I think if you're like a serious client and you're serious about the work that you have commissioned, then I think that you would see by nature the limitations of AI. I think slash hope that would be the case.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. We have about 10 minutes left. So,
yep. So again, like you can see me now, like knuckling down on some of the detail in the face here and trying to like get that same sense of lighting that I had before. Excuse me, remnants of a little bit of a cough, I guess. Without sort of getting too hectic in that kind of level of detail. So effectively, all I'm doing now is just spending more time doing the same thing, right? Spending time refining that concept, trying to keep that kind of brushy vibe that I had, trying to keep the main source of lighting as well that I had. That's kind of working for me at this stage. That's the most kind of crucial aspect of all this, I think, still, is making sure that the lighting isn't screwing everything up and doesn't make sense. Let's get some eyebrows in there. We're putting that on the same layer as the stripes again for the same reason we did with those stripes in the first place. We might be doing them with a little bit less painty and a little bit more inky. But also because we're doing this mixed media, I can leave some things loose in here. I don't need to be full kind of paint medium, because the line work that I'm going to do tomorrow is going to come and like forgive me for a lot of this lack of information, if that makes sense.
right.
So I'm not too worried about it at this stage. If I was doing this for real, like if I was doing this not as part of a live stream, I probably would have started the sketching already.
Yes.
On top of this, just to kind of see like, all right, this is working, kind of jump ahead into the future, if you will, and like make sure that what you're doing is actually going to work, and you're not just kind of wasting your time. But yeah,
save that for tomorrow.
Yeah, exactly.
It's looking great. Even the colors that you've picked, it's not too far from what you create anyway in your style, like quite a bit neon-y. Yeah.
And that's why I suppose that's why like Beetlejuice kind of fits with that. And like I'm pumped for Beetlejuice to be coming out anyways, but
I can't wait.
It is that kind of like artwork that fits that kind of vibe, I guess. Whoa. Ooh, I'm not liking this brush, what it's doing. Bit of trial and error here, obviously.
Yeah.
But that's kind of part of the fun of doing this, I think.
Speaking of colors, we have a question from Flynn. In terms of generating colored versions in multiple styles from a sketch he's drawn, it would be super cool to have a reference before getting into painting. So can you do that in Illustrator? And he says that you have a method, a hue and saturation method on that.
In terms of color referencing?
Yes, before you start getting into the painting.
Yeah, so I have, well, I'll have to bring it up tomorrow. I'll have to go dig through my files and everything to find it. I've got a bunch of little kind of like, they look like Trivial Pursuit pieces. It's just like these little like 6-color setups that I can use to kind of generate very quick ideas of different color schemes. And that can be really kind of handy when you're doing something like this, to just work from a limited base of colors, right? So when you start, you kind of have something a little bit more limited. Then when you get into it, you can start going like, hey, what if there was a a warmer color or a different color tone in here. So we'd come in here with something like this, or just like maybe the moon is up here, right? And then when that kind of happens, you've got an extra highlight that you can bring in and kind of add a little bit more detail into your
Awesome.
artwork in that
That's
way. So
great.
I'll showcase that a little bit more in tomorrow's stream and kind of how
Tomorrow's
that
session.
works. But it's
Awesome.
this idea is like 60-30-10, and we'll get into that a little bit
That's
tomorrow as
great.
well.
So for that was a question from Inquisitive actually. So for anyone tuning in today, we'll be streaming tomorrow at the exact same time, and Jeremy will be able to walk you through those tips and tricks. But we have about 2 minutes. So did you have anything else to quickly show us before we wrap up?
No, not necessarily. Like, I guess the main thing here is, again, as I said, maybe I'll just kind of jump ahead in terms of what this is going to do when I start kind of adding in some inking to this, and how that's going to work. But effectively now what I've got is I've got a separate layer where I'm going to start thinking about like, and probably not in blue. I want it definitely to be in black. As soon as I start adding in this kind of like a little bit more detail in here, you'll see that like a lot is forgiven in terms of what I've left undefined. And so that's going to be kind of tomorrow's stream, is making sure that that is looking nice and kind of a little bit more detailed, a little bit more kind of refined, but keeping that base of that kind of painterly style there that I
Oh, I
kind
love
of
that.
enjoy working with. But yeah, obviously we'll
Yeah.
do it a little bit better tomorrow. But yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Jeremy. Quickly, where can we find you online and on Instagram
I
as well?
am at Jeremy Lord underscore on Instagram, and jeremylord.com is my website. And yeah, that's about it.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for taking us through today. And for anyone that is interested, we are tuning in at the exact same time tomorrow on Behance and YouTube. So thank you so much for joining and look forward to seeing you soon.
Yep. See you tomorrow, Chip.